today's trauma discussion is about relationship trauma as it relates to a couple of different paradigms within the queer community, but as much as um, for um, other aspects of trauma. By the way, I just want to point out that Aubrey confirmed that during Trump's speech at the Pentagon today for the 9/11, um, the left side of his face was drooping. So maybe we're soon, like very soon.
Maybe he's just half sad.
And also, I don't know if you know, but maybe you don't know. Maybe you live under a rock. Charlie Kirk is dead.
Oh yeah,
Charlie Kirk?
Charlie
Charlie
Kirk.
Kirk.
That guy who incessantly advocated for violence against people like me?
Yes. And me.
That
but
doesn't, that,
against all
that
of
doesn't
us.
sound right.
Right. All right. So, talking about from a relationship perspective, the thing that I wanted to touch on today was so the first one, so Miranda, your perspective about this, I think is important, and probably, actually not probably, very likely, Brandon,
Oh
your
no, I'm not important.
well, no, your perspective on this is important because I didn't experience as much of this as maybe either of you did, and so that's parental rejection. When you came out, what was your parental rejection experience like?
So, okay, so I'll take this one first.
Okay.
I did not face parental rejection. I faced other family member rejection.
Okay.
But
So I should quantify. When I say parental rejection, I'm literally talking about unilateral family rejection. So continue.
yeah. So for me, one of the people who rejected me, and I kind of expected it, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt, was my maternal grandfather. He's someone who, when I was growing up, always tried to push a very like traditional kind of masculinity on me. Was disappointed that I didn't like hunting and stuff, and um, but we had a shared interest in cars. So that was a space that we bonded over the years. And in about like 1999, 2000, somewhere around there, he decided that he was going to restore um, a car that was the same model that was his first car when he turned 16.
Right.
So, so he bought a couple of them because you need to when you're working on something from 1948. So he built this 1948 Chevrolet sedan. Um, everything was stock. Everything was um, exactly like the one that he had, same color and everything, seafoam green. And the only difference was that he added a sun visor because that was something that he had wanted when when he was 16, and but his original one didn't have that. So at the time that he was building the car, I was in high school, and he lived in Oklahoma, and he lived in Colorado Springs. So one year for spring break, my mom and I drove up to Colorado so that I could work in the car with him. Because he had made a big deal about how he wanted this to be a project that his oldest grandson could work on with him. Um, so at that point, he had just had the um, chassis like sealed and painted, um, and so it was time to build the brake system. So we spent a couple of days bending copper tubing and building a whole brake system from scratch, and um, it was a good time of bonding. He talked about how um, because you're my oldest grandson and you've worked on this car with me, whenever I pass, I want um, you to be the one who inherits this car. Um, so whenever I was getting ready to come out, I knew based on his politics and religion, this was going to be a hard sell. But I hoped that, somebody in his family, somebody he said he loved, coming out would help change his mind about trans people. So I wrote him a letter, um, and talked about the experience of building that car with him, talked to him about how I always looked up to him, um, and no response.
Right.
Um, a couple days later, he posted a meme on Facebook that said something like "God knows what gender you are," and then unfriended me. Um, so so that was October of 2023. Then in December, or maybe it was into January 2024, um, he fell ill. Um, he was, well into his 80s. Um, so they found out that he had some kind of blood cancer. And so I was like, um, spent some time with the idea that my grandpa's dying and we're not on speaking terms, and I don't know if we're ever going to speak again. And um, we didn't. um, in that, in like in my coming out letter, I talked about um, even if he didn't like agree with my lifestyle or whatever the fuck, um, that he'd always been a wonderful great grandfather to my kids, and I hoped that me coming out didn't hurt their relationship. So he spent the spring and summer in and out of hospitals. Initially tried to fight the cancer and then kind of went on more of a hospice situation by the end of the summer. Um, so he um, texted me like a couple weeks before Moon's birthday last year, and asked for our address so he could send a card. And no other conversation or anything. I gave him the address. I um, let him know that he could call, we could talk. He just ignored it. Um, and then in I don't remember the exact date, but um, last December or might have been first week of January of this year, um, he died. And um, then there was the whole funeral thing. Um, because I live in Denver now. Colorado Springs isn't very far away. So um, our family planned the funeral, planned for him to have military honors. He was an Army veteran, um, Purple Heart recipient. Um, and I had some awkward conversations with some family members about whether I was going to go to the funeral. Um, my mom checked with me several times on my decision. Like she always came with like whatever you decide is right for you is fine. Um, but I think she had this idea that it would still help me find some kind of closure. Um, but I was like, I've been mourning him for 2 years or year and a half, whatever. So yeah, and like one of my cousins reached out and was like, you know, I know that y'all weren't talking, but I hope to see you there. And I had this weird conversation with my mom where she had talked to her siblings about whether it was okay if I was there. Yeah, because they're all politically right wing kind of people, um, who of course think I am the pinnacle of immorality, but they're the kind of people who will like be respectful to you in person and then vote against you. Um, so I had their blessing to come to this family event, but I was like, no. Um, so that's someone in my family I lost when I came out, and since he died, I've had to had times where it was like, I put the ball in his court.
Right.
I told him I was open to conversation, um, and he chose not to reconcile. Um, and then there are other times where it's like I be like, if I'd done this thing differently or this thing differently, or maybe I should have um just picked up the phone and called him and not waited for him to come around. Um, Yeah. Wendy shared the link. I have a poem about this and about the car.
I dropped both of those on purpose. Um,
Yeah.
Here's the thing about that. So purely from a
I'm happy to read poetry if you want me to.
purely from a therapeutic perspective, when you've been through that grief process, and this is a person who I went through the same thing with Zoe, and Zoe was my mother, and the reason that Zoe and I stopped speaking was not because of my orientation or my gender. It was over something entirely and viscerally different, but it's the same compartmentalization. And, when she passed on, when she took her long walk, I didn't get told. I didn't find out until a month and a half. I didn't find out till much after. And then there was shit that had to be done as a result of that or whatever. So,
Yeah.
um, but speaking to the point about like you could have reached out or you could have attempted to force that's something you can't do. Um, if
Yeah,
you
and intellect like it's easy to know that intellectually.
Yeah.
emotionally is something entirely different.
Emotionally is something entirely different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gone through that a lot too. The what ifs. What if I had done this or that? And can't go down that road because it's never ending.
Yeah.
No, because there's always the logic. The human brain will tell you that you feel like you could have done more, and you
Yeah.
did, and you can't put that burden on your own shoulders. You just can't. Um, if you showed up and there were still deaf ears, um, that doesn't reflect on your worthiness. It doesn't any more than it would on anyone else's. So, and the fact remains, Miranda, that there are people around you, myself included, who care. And if we upswing against that vacancy of caring, then it doesn't make it easier. I mean, it doesn't fill that void, but it makes things not as hard.
Yeah.
I think. Um, okay, Brandon.
I know I'm a hard act to follow sometimes.
Well, so a few years ago, I was in a living situation where I was very depressed. I needed to get out of it. And a relative of mine had a small building they had converted into an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment. And they agreed to let me move in there. I'd pay them a little rent and that and all that. But um and my boyfriend Joe at the time, he was living in St. Louis area, across the state, and he we talked about him moving in with me possibly. But of course I had to ask my relative who owned the place and everything that make sure it was okay and of course I didn't go into detail about who Joe was to me. I just said a friend of mine needs a place to stay for a little while until he finds a permanent place around here, which was true. I mean, we didn't plan on living there together forever. We kind of wanted to find our own place and everything. And he didn't really like that idea. He's like, "Oh, I don't think I want anybody else moving in there, blah blah. And but then he apparently told my dad about this, that I had asked about it, and etc. And my my family was aware of Joe. I don't know if they really knew the extent of our relationship or anything. But after after I asked about him moving in and everything, my dad found out that I had asked and all that, and so he basically confronted. I mean, they pretty much knew I was gay, but we never talked about it. Never confronted that issue, or I never came out to them. So he just point blank asked me if I was gay, and I said I was, and I guess he had looked up Joe on Facebook and stuff, and he said some very negative things about him, and told me that I wouldn't be, after he died, I wouldn't be getting any kind of inheritance from them, or at least not equal to my siblings. Basically, just that I wasn't part of the family exactly. I mean, I was still. Oh, and he said if I ever brought a guy home to a family dinner, that we'd be the only ones there because no one else would show up. And which may not have necessarily been true, but that was his position, and he was using that to kind of intimidate me, I guess. And holding the like inheriting anything after he died, that was kind of another tactic. Just like, oh yeah, well, if you're gonna be gay, you don't get anything. No, no, it was kind of immature, which he kind of is anyway. I feel like he's always been kind of that way, but basically is just, yeah, just basically rejecting me. Um, I was still welcome at family dinners and everything, and I could come over whenever I wanted. But if I were to ever bring a guy home, this is conditional love,
Yeah. The whole like be a celibate gay
right?
nonsense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could come over, but don't ever talk about don't ever talk about being gay or having a relationship with a guy, or you know bringing someone home and throwing in their faces, you know. Even though, even if I did bring somebody home, I would never, we wouldn't like, we wouldn't be making out in the middle of Christmas dinner or anything like that. It's just, we'd be there together. That's, that's it. Um, but yeah, since then, of course, Joe died, and, that, kind of made that point moot in a way. I
Yeah.
mean, it, he would never come to meet in my family or anything. But but since then, things have basically gone back to how they were before. I mean, we never really had much of a relationship the whole time I was growing up, and talked superficially. Had
Mhm.
very short conversations and stuff, and that's the way it is now. Just back to what it was before. We don't talk about anything having to do with me being gay or going on dates or anything like that. That's just sweep all that under the rug and just pretend everything's the way they want it to be. So yeah, I mean, that's it, I guess. That's where we are now.
You have to realize that therapeutically, conditional love is not love at all. It isn't.
Oh yeah.
At best, conditional love is performance review disguised as affection. Their love that disappears when suddenly you appear with someone that you love and care about. The way to solve that is to not contort yourself to those expectations. You can find unconditional love elsewhere. Like I said, it's the thing I told Miranda before. It's like you have that void, but there are other people who are willing to extend you that emotion and that feeling. I care.
Yeah.
If I didn't care, you wouldn't be in here and we wouldn't be talking about this. We wouldn't be vulnerable. On top of the fact, by the way, that I said you were cute, and if I were still male identifying, I'd date the fuck out of you. but the thing that you have to do is you have to set that boundary, and within the performance of that boundary, you have to understand that their conditions are just a cage. And so you have to grieve that loss.
Now, I don't know if my dad weren't around, what my mom how she would take things. I mean, I know she grew up in a very religious household. She grew up in a Pentecostal church.
Right.
So very, very strict as far as for homosexuality and all the big sins, But
right.
She has more empathy than my dad does. And I could see her accepting someone that I would bring home. She may not still agree with it. That religious upbringing, that mindset, that's not going to change for her.
But she's not going to be vocal about it, likely.
Right.
Yeah.
And she'll have some kind of like, I'm happy, my son's happy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I can't say for sure, because it just depends on if that certain situation were to occur. I can just speculate, but I mean, we'll never know about that unless it actually happens. And I don't know, as far as like now, if I were to meet a guy that I really cared for and everything, no, I don't know what direction, how I would take that. Would I still go to my family's Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything and just go by myself, or not go at all because they wouldn't accept my boyfriend or husband, whatever it might be, whatever he might be to me?
Right.
And a lot of that depends on him too.
Right.
I will let him know how they feel, and I'm not gonna just throw him to the lions. Just bring
No.
him over and say,
Right,
oh, by
yeah,
the
let's
way, right before we're walking in the door, oh, by the way, they're all gonna hate you. But no, we would have that discussion beforehand and see how he feels.
and make
I
that
mean,
decision together.
right.
Yeah.
Well, see, from my perspective, coming out as queer and then ultimately coming out as trans was so my paternal family, they were split. My dad's is blue blooded, you know, my dad's a registered Green Party member. So like that was never going to be a problem. However, my aunt, his sister, was an entirely different story. And so um, when I came out as trans, that blew her off of the deep end. And so, you know, performatively, I got invited to a Christmas, Yule activity or whatever. Because, you know, my dad and my aunt grew up in Atlanta. And they're very traditional Atlanta old money. And so, like, I buoyed it up for that. I didn't put any makeup on. I didn't shave for like 4 days. You know, I really tried to play it up, and it was uncomfortable as all get out. And I remember sitting down at the dinner table, and my aunt was sitting next to me, and she literally looks at me and says, "Is it so hard for you to be that way?" And I nearly had a panic attack right there. I just I couldn't do it. And so, you know, I left that situation and I told my dad, I'm like, I am never doing that again. I am never walking into that situation again. And I am never going to be treated that way ever again. Well, turns out this happened about 2 or 3 months ago. Um, my aunt's ex-husband, who is the father of one of my aunt's kids, and then the father of two of my aunt's stepkids, passed away. And so there was a funeral, and all the family was invited. And so Aubrey and I went. And I did not buoy it up for that. I wore a nice pair of boots, a nice pair of leggings, a sequined black sequined top. I did my makeup and everything. And so I went, and what a nightmare. And so, like, I got to the church, and my dad's in town, and my siblings are in town, and I'm like texting my dad, where are you guys? Where is everybody? I'm here. Just tell me where to go. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And so Aubrey and I went to the back of the church and sat down. Well, they started the funeral procession of the family, and they all walked in. My dad, my brother, and my sister. And my dad looked at me and went, as he's walking up the center of the aisle. And I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. And so they had the funeral, and, so then there was a gathering in one of the antechambers of the church. And so I went in there, And that's when it got really, really uncomfortable. So like one of my cousins I've talked to a whole lot, and we have good conversations. My partner and I go and have lunch with him every so often, a couple times a year or whatever. He doesn't give a shit. But his older brother is a Florida living, uh, wears both of his 9mm on his hips, Trump person. And so, which was weird because I walked up to him in the wake at the church, and he shook my hand and he talked to me. I mean, he was nice and everything. Well, here's what happened. There were people whispering apparently behind me that were unaware of the fact that I heard what they were saying. And I got wind of the fact that numerous members of the family were like, why is that thing here? Why did that thing come to this event? I don't want that thing to ever come to a family event ever again. That thing doesn't belong. And so that was extremely, extremely painful. And so, you know, we were standing there, and my younger cousin, who was most affected by his dad's passing or whatever, wouldn't even engage me, wouldn't even walk up and shake my hand. I started to walk up to him, and he walked away. And so I felt like such a fucking leper. And so, my cousin approached me and said, we're going back to X house. We're going back to my house after the wake is over. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to be there. And his exact words to me were, that's probably a good idea. And I said, well, I've heard what your older brother's kids have said, and I'm not happy about it. But I don't have any control over them. I don't even have a relationship with them. I'm not allowed to. And so I said, fuck it. I I cannot do this. So we got in the car, Aubrey drove me home, and I cried a whole bunch or whatever. But, you know, when you have family that are going to treat you that way, you have to establish boundaries. So when Georgia called me, um, like a couple of days later or whatever, I told her, I'm like, I am never doing that again. But here's the thing, and I was a little spiteful about this. She said, good. And I said, right. Up until the day you take the long walk, because then I'm going to show. And I don't give two flying fucks what anyone in the family says about it. Because you can sit here and tell me I'm not a woman. You can sit here and tell me what the fuck I am and what the fuck I am not. But when you're not here, you can't say shit to my face. And so just, let it go. Just let it go. Because yeah, I don't need that in my, I have enough problems not to allow that to affect me in that way. And I say that, and today is September 11th. My aunt lost her second youngest child in the 9/11 attacks. He was in the North Tower. He died on the 106th floor. Adam was his name. And I guarantee you, my phone's going to ring before the day is over, and it's going to be her. Because she'll be hurting, and she'll be looking for someone to support her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to not answer that phone because that person's in pain. Whether I have a problem with that person, how that person treats me. As a druid, I am ascribed to answer that call and tell her it's okay. I understand what you've lost. I understand the pain that you are in. And I understand where you are, and I'm sorry. I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know why, but that's how it is. And that's how you deal with it. So, yeah, you set boundaries and you observe them and you force the people who are around you to deal with it. That's what conditional love dynamics forces you into.
Yeah.
And there's not really any other way to deal with it. When people mistreat you, when people do things to you that are negative, when people say things about you, um, you don't have any control over that. I mean, the only control you have over it is whether or not you choose to listen to it or not. A family member who treats you a certain way because you're gay, or because you're trans, or because you convert to Islam, or some other random, divisive reason that they would treat you that way because of whatever that reason is. The only control you have over that is whether you listen to it or you don't.
Basically, if they set conditions for how they treat you or how they love you, you end up having to set conditions of your own or boundaries.
Yes, which is wrong. It's right for you to do that. It's
Right,
wrong.
right,
It's wrong for them to put you into that position.
right.
Um, it just is. So, and then yeah, you just try to deal with it. However the fuck that works out. Um, and then you move on from it. Which leads to the second question in the narrative. Hell, we might not get through this one. Isolation from faith traditions. It's, you first, not you, Miranda. Yeah, I like Brandon. I'm gonna guess like came out, said you were gay, and then you never went to church again, right?
No, I did. Because uh, I didn't make like a, kind of a public announcement and coming out to my parents. Of course, they weren't going to tell anybody. They
Oh,
didn't
right.
because
Yeah, they weren't gonna tell me, but of course
they
not.
wouldn't. They didn't because that would reflect on them. My
Right.
dad, he's very
Yeah.
much about what other people think, and it's like if people found out that I have a gay son, what would that say about me?
Yeah,
Or
that hurts his social position in the church. Yeah.
right, in the community, who with his um, rural farm buddies or whatever.
Why the fuck do they care? I mean, honestly. Jesus did not care about social standing. I just want to be clear about that.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, but so yeah, I still went to church sometimes. A lot of time, well, a lot of times in church they didn't address homosexuality very directly. I mean, in some churches do, of course, but a lot of times they kind of, I think they were afraid of addressing it in some ways. I saw, you know who Joel Osteen is, probably.
Unfortunately.
So I saw an interview with him on, I think it was the Today Show or something, and they asked, because he had never preached on or against homosexuality,
Right.
and they asked him about it. They asked him why, and he said, "Because I don't understand it. You know, I, he didn't condemn it. He just didn't. He didn't understand it enough to speak on it, I guess, is what he was saying."
Right.
And I think that's kind of the way that some other preachers are too. It seems like they don't understand it and don't want to address it, but some do, even though they don't they just, all they know is,
Yeah,
they're
the
like, this
lack of
is
understanding
wrong.
doesn't slow some people down.
Right. In his case, yeah, it did, but in some people's eyes, it's like, well, this is what this verse says, and this is what we're going to go by. This is the standard. This is wrong. That's it. There's no nuance, no understanding, no empathy. This is the way it is. But I still did go because I still found a sense of community in the church. I still, I was, at the time, I was going to a Sunday school class that was like a college and career class. And we got together for game nights and little trips and everything like that. And it was nice to have some kind of community, some kind of friendship. Now, if I would have come out to them and said I was gay, there would probably have been some kind of, they would have to pray for me. And, I don't know if I would have been, I don't know. I don't know how that would have gone exactly. If I would have been welcomed at their events and things. I don't know. I'm not sure how it's probably not something they had ever dealt with before in the town that I was in. They wouldn't have had anybody come in and come out to them and had to deal with that. There's no way. So I'm not sure. They probably wouldn't know how to deal with it. It would be new territory for them.
Right.
So, yeah, but yeah, I did continue to go and be part of that community because there was no queer community in that area that I was aware of, at least. And maybe coming out would have helped me find them. I'm not sure. I mean, it was a college town, and so I'm sure there was some kind of LGBTQ um, group. Although at that time, I don't know. This was several years ago. I may be older than I look. I don't, and
Things
even
may be older than they appear in the mirror.
right. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the community there. I know there were. I knew gay people. Oh, I talked about in the live last time, I think, about being in the music program, and there were obviously there were gay people in that program, but yeah, I wasn't open enough to be part of that at the time.
Ellen, if I brought Brandon to the Bay Area, he would disappear.
Oh my gosh,
We
I would
wouldn't
disappear.
see him for like
That's right.
3 weeks, and then
That's
suddenly he
right.
would appear, and we would ask him, Brandon, what happened? I have no idea.
All I know is I'm real worn out.
Well, I I was gonna ask you this question, Miranda, but um, we're right at time, and I'm gonna have to go to the doctor. So we'll pick this back up on Tuesday. Uh, let me earmark my notes so that um, we can talk about uh, you know religious isolation.
I'll be going on with Karen Marie Shelton in about 15 minutes.
So you're doing a Karen Marie interview?
Yes, she's going to be asking me some questions. I saw Peter in here earlier. He asked what time it was going to be. He probably thought this was the thing,
Right.
but
So she's doing
I
that on the collective, right?
I think so.
Yeah, that's a collective live. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I don't
yeah.
know what she's gonna ask me.
No,
She
I told
said,
you just expect like a 45-minute.
"Oh
Like I
dear."
told her originally, like you need to keep those to half an
She's
hour.
really gonna grill you.
But really, I mean, it's gonna be a fun chat. So,
Yeah. I've talked to Karen several times, so I love Karen. I think she's great.
so are you two are okay with um 1 or 2 o'clock on Tuesday?
As far as I know.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, cool. Well, Brandon, good luck on your live. I'll be boosting the shit out of it. Um, and then we'll just meet back up next Tuesday to continue talking about trauma. I want to ask this vulnerability. One, are both of you okay with it? And two, is it helpful to you?
Yes and yes.
Okay. Well,
No, I'm just,
fuck off,
I'm
Brandon.
fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
No, but is it helpful and beneficial to
I think it's more helpful for other people.
you?
You know, I mean, I've dealt with it.
No, like
I'm
yeah, but
okay,
like dealt with it, but yeah, I think
but I think it is helpful for other people to hear these
well,
stories and to know what we all go through. But
as a druid, oral traditions and the passing of oral traditions are a crucial element of existence, and so I think we need to get doing it. So thank you for continuing to agree to um, continue this anyway. So well, I'm gonna let both of you go. Thank you everyone that came in. If you're new, please subscribe. Yada yada. You know, we're good people here. We're all like a giant family. We all cry over each other. I've cried a couple times in this session, just not been obvious about it. So, um, Brandon, Miranda, thank you both.